welcome to our Coffee and Consulting event from today about the topic how the pandemic changed global mobility and the impact on 22. I hope you already have taken your cup of coffee and have it with you so that we also can start right now. My name is Friederike Ruch and I'm the one today introducing you to that topic. Before we start, on the right hand side there's a box where you can actually put down any question you may have. Maybe you had already the one or the other before you came to the event. Just write them down and we will get back to you. Or you also have the possibility to just write us an email afterwards and we are happy to answer that afterwards. Our topic from today is how the pandemic changed global mobility and the impact on or for 22. Now, before we start on the impact on 22, we will shortly move to this year and see what actually were the topics from this year and what were our, I would say, main concerns for this year. If I look at all our clients and as well as us, what had been or where had been the most questions about, then it started certainly with Brexit and with the impact it had on moving people from the UK to Switzerland, where there is now a huge change above all in immigration as well as in social security. We finally just signed the new social security agreement, which is basically more or less equivalent to the one we have with the EU. But it took now as well more than 9 months to get it approved and signed off from both sides. In regard to immigration, more or less UK nationals are treated the same way as any other non-EU EFTA national, which sometimes is a bit more difficult than to get a UK national the necessary work and residence permit, because there is the need of a job search as we need for any other non-EU EFTA national. This year, as well as last year, we had always to check if somebody is going from one country to the other country, how he or she can cross the border, what are the necessary requirements, is there anything like writing or filling out an entry form, what is the requirement in regard to the tests, is a PCR test, a negative one, sufficient, or is there the need of anything else? When actually has the testing to be done? That is also, depending on the country, quite different. And as well as what is the impact on the vaccination. If you are fully vaccinated and have the COVID certificate, is every certificate the same way, or are there any differences? So that had definitely been the topic from this year, and it will most likely be also the topic for next year, because COVID-19 is in some countries more already vanished as in others. In a couple of countries there is even now the situation as it was more or less since the beginning of this year, where countries are starting to initiating again regulations to somehow limit the way of dealing with each other. So COVID-19 is definitely not off our books. We still need to look at what will be the impact then next year as well. What does it mean if somebody goes from one country to the other country? So still we need to check every time what are the requirements. Based on COVID-19, we had the situation that all of us, we worked more or less from home. Now, technically, there were maybe in the beginning the one or the other hiccup, but for most of us, I would say it worked quite well. Due to that, cross-border workers who worked then in their home office, so abroad, there were also no problems at all to do that. From a legal point of view, there's also not an issue until end of the year. At least with most of the countries, there were agreements that in line that from a social security perspective as well as from a tax perspective, there should be no issue. They will be dealt with like they would have worked in the office. Now for 22, those transitional agreements are not any longer valid. So from next year on, we will have to look at how we will deal with home office work for cross-border workers. There is again then the rule you may still know or may know, the 25% regulation from the Social Security point of view, which will become again a hot topic, and companies will have to think about what they want to do, as well as the tax point will be again a matter which companies have to look at. Because of people being able, at least technically, without any issue to work from home, the topic of remote work had increased this year. We've seen a lot of companies who started to think about it, to think about whether that might be actually a good option for them. If you may think about someone who is married and has children, is, for example, living in the UK, and you do want to hire him in Switzerland, you know that from an immigration perspective, it is a huge effort to get the permit for him or her. And then you think about that the spouse is working today, so if they change and will move to Switzerland, they will have to find a new job, or the spouse will have to find a new job. The kids, depending on the age, most likely have to go to, or the family wants them to go to an international school where they speak English instead of just to a local Swiss school, which also means it is a bit more cost intensive than sending them just to the public school. All in all, there might be a bit of more issues with that. And if you think that the individual actually can perfectly well work, just looking at the job itself, work from home, meaning from the UK, there is no legal restriction in regard to cross-border actions or so. So why not? Now the thing is, from a technical point, or maybe also from a functional point of view, there is no problem at all. But there are a couple of implications then in regard to Social Security, taxes, and you also may have to check in regards to work permit or immigration then in the country they are situated. But it might be actually an easy option. If you think about otherwise, you have to deal with an employee moving his family from one country to the other country, and with all the topics there are. I think, and we will come to that in a moment, that is also something we will have to deal next year, and in the next few years this might increase, and there might be positions and jobs where that is actually a very good solution. Because of that we worked from home and not really had to go and come to the office, people also thought, why actually not go to maybe a fancy place, have a bit of a holiday, and then also start to work there, so to kind of earn some money, maybe then being able to stay a little longer than intended. That would be great, so just working in the dream office. Now, from a technical point of view, no problem at all. But from a legal point of view, meaning from a immigration, social security, or tax point of view, that is not that simple and easy. So each of the situations have to be looked at and reviewed in order to see whether that really works and what kind of legal actions you will have to take in order to be completely compliant, or whether there is no problem at all with that. And that will be a topic for 22 as well. This year also we had gender discussions, or drafting job advertisements and documents and contracts in a kind of gender neutral way came into focus of everyday's business, as well as the topic of diversity, and to take care that you are looking at that a bit more closely. Definitely in regard to job advertisements, you will have to, or we had to look at that a bit closer, as well as you most likely will have to look at policies, regulations, staff handbooks, and so on, to see whether there might be the need to change that as well, or to adjust it accordingly. Now, if we look on the assignments side, then there were, I would say, 3 things we had to deal with in a bit with a high number as compared to other years. There were situations where assignments had to be delayed, either because of the assignee didn't feel secure and safe just to go to the other country, because the situation of COVID was maybe in the country in a different way as home, and the assignee and the family might have thought it might be not the best place to go, or the best time basically to go to the other country. That was one reason. The other reason maybe was as well that companies thought as well it might be not the best time point because of the COVID situation, or also because of economic, or also the factor that immigration has taken or took longer than actually intended. The other thing was that assignments had to be cancelled, or as well shortened, because of COVID. There were a couple of where cancelling maybe was the better option than shortening it, but both had been, I assume, also in your companies on a daily basis an issue. We had that in 20, where it was mostly assignments just had been cancelled because there was no way you knew whether somebody could actually move from one country to the other. This year the cancelling decreased, I would say, but more into the focus came that assignments had been shortened because companies thought about the assignment again, and then thought maybe it's better to have it in a shorter way than the intention was. There were also the matter about that assignments had to be terminated earlier, and then people or assignees and the families had to be repatriated. That was mainly because of the COVID situation, mainly also because of the assignee or the companies thought it's maybe the country the assignee was in is not the right place to be because of the COVID matter. Companies had to think about what their repatriation plan looks like and the process is. That was a hot topic in 20. Now 21, again, we had to look at it, and there were situations where there was just no other way. Sometimes the repatriation took place that they went really back home, or sometimes just in a different country, maybe nearby, looked whether that would be the right place, and then later on moved back to the country. But that was really based on each specific situation. So these were the topics in 21. Now, looking at 22, what do we need to look at or put into our focus? Mainly, I would say companies have to look at their global mobility programs, see whether the program they have is actually the right one in the sense of whether that still fits the needs of the company, as well as whether the assignees and the assignment population is still covered the best. So it might be now a good time point, if you have not already started with it, to look at what had been in the last 3 to 5 years, what kind of assignments took place, where the programs actually fitting exactly the needs of the assignees, as well as the needs of the business. As well as if you look at the future and look at what you think might happen in the next 3-5 years, is that still the best thing, or maybe the one or the other part of the global mobility program needs to be changed. You also should ask the business to get their feedback and to get their ideas about what the future may have, so that you design or adjust the programs in a way that it really makes sense for the next 3 to 5 years. The same thing is about assignment policies. So if you look at your current assignment policies, then look at it whether, yes, it was the right ones for the last 3 to 5 years, and how actually will it be for the next 3 to 5 years? Will there still be the right ones, or maybe you need to adjust them, or maybe you need to add the one or the other thing? I would say you should maybe also check on your population, the assignment length of the assignments you plan to do, and whether you have the right one for business travelers as well. We will come to that in a second, but from my perspective, that is one of the hot topics for 22, that business travelers will be more and more becoming into the focus of companies, and that you definitely have to look at that population. What we have seen is, and what will be still be a topic for 22, is the reasons for assignments and whether the one candidate you have in mind is really the right person to assign to the specific location. I would say in the past that was not that much in focus. Usually, at least from the outside, you had sometimes you saw that just the person who actually shouted the loudest was in the end selected for the assignment. But maybe that was not really the best person or the best fit for the assignment. And this, I would say, had a bit changed in the last 2 years, and I think companies started really to look at the reasons for assignment a bit closer, as well as to see whether the candidate they had selected is really the right fit. And also not just looking at all the technical skills and the skills that the assignee has, but also on the social side, whether that person can actually adjust perfectly, is maybe also the best person or the better person for the selected country. Not everybody is actually the best fit for all the countries. So there are a couple of things you should look and put a bit more into focus maybe. And that I think we learned just. The topic of health precautions, safety, as well as whether the individual, when he goes on assignment, has the right insurance coverage, will be still one of the top of our list to look at for assignments in 22 as well as in the future years. We learned that it is crucial that companies really look at that very closely, and that they look whether the insurance coverage and insurances basically they have are the right ones, as well as whether the insurance coverage also covers the part of repatriation. Not all the repatriations we had was that people had been sick or so unwell that they were not able to just fly with the next plane back home. Some had been in a condition where they had a certain secure flight, and that is then quite cost intensive if you don't have the right coverage. So that is definitely something you need to look at if you haven't done that already. The repatriation process was not that much in focus before 2020, but started definitely to be in the focus. And if you haven't looked at it or haven't done the outline yet, then now might be exactly the right time point to do that, so that for the future you have there the adjustment made which are required. Compliance will be becoming more and more a hot topic. Authorities are more and more connected, and they exchange information. We have seen that from a tax point of view quite heavily, but that also happens in regard to immigration and social security. So even here in Switzerland, the immigration authority and the tax authorities exchange information from time to time. So, and that will also happen, or that also happens over the border. So that, therefore, now definitely is the right time point, or next year then as well, to focus on that part, and where there still is a place to make adjustments. The topic of permanent establishment is something which also will be next year a topic for each of the companies, for everybody who has people working remotely or working out of the home office instead of the office, if that is in a different country. So that is the permanent establishment risk is something you should put also as one of the criteria to look at when you assign an employee from one country to the other country. Cost savings, definitely one of the key things to look at. Companies have done that in the last few years already, but also will focus on that in the future. Not that much that now the salaries and all the assignment allowances will be coming nil, but to see where you spend money and whether that is in the right way or not. Because of all these matters, technical tools becoming more and more topic companies look at, just because it's also becoming more complex any day, and to have a kind of support, a technical tool might be the right answer. We will see in 22, or at least based on our opinion, we will see an increase of virtual assignments. It had already an increase in 21, but definitely that is something companies will think about for future assignments, whether they have the right outline already, and putting this maybe also as an option to all the other assignment models. Business trips or short-term assignments definitely will be hot on the list, and will be something each company most likely sees quite an increase in it. Now, you may think, okay, the assignment will be now for a shorter period of time, or it will be just a business trip, so easy to handle. Don't forget, there is still a lot to think about, and there is quite a few compliance issues to view at as well. So don't underestimate that also takes quite a bit of time of your work. Permanent local employment with working abroad, these remote working concepts will increase because from a technical point there is no problem at all. It also might make sense from a personal perspective, looking at the employee himself or herself. However, there is quite an administrative part on top of it, and it also might be not the right model for every position and every function, but there might be for certain functions exactly the best fit. That the cross-border worker do want to work out of home as they did in the past, and they are now seeing that it might even be quite convenient for them. That will be also in 22 an issue, and their companies are then in a position to see how they can make it work. More or less just from the legal perspective, because as said, up to end of this year, we do have the kind of transitional agreements and provisions in place, where that should be not a problem at all. But starting from next year on, that might be something you need to look at a bit closer. And the topic that people wish to work for a certain period of time from abroad, for whatever kind of reasons, is something companies have to review and make a decision for their company what is the right way to deal with it. Because the wish from the employees might not just vanish, so you may need to think about what is your answer to that wish. From our perspective, what we see is that these normal assignments, like for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, somebody goes from one country to the other countries, may decrease. They will not vanish, but they will decrease in the sense that companies look at the cost factor, look at whether there's really the need that the assignee is for that long in that specific country, with all the assignment allowances and the assignment salary which it costs, or whether there might be not the possibility to have it changed to either a virtual assignment or having someone just being there for a couple of weeks in a year instead of full time, and where you also have to move a family from one country to the other country. So these are basically the aspects and topics we see in 22. I assume most of it is now not completely new to you, and you most likely think in your company it will work just the same way. We would have now time for all of your questions. So in case you haven't already sent a question, then you still can do. So I will start with the first question. Do you think that the number of assignments will drastically increase? Now, I would say the assignments or the number of assignments most likely will not drastically increase. They may get to the number we had just before before COVID started. I think what you have most likely seen in your companies as well, that in the first couple of months of this year it was a bit still slow, but it increased then with people being able to move from one country to the other country, also because of the vaccination efforts done in all the countries. So if you look at today, you see there is quite a good number on assignments or traffic back and forth. So I think, yes, the assignments will most likely go back to the number we had before the COVID situation started. The next question is, we only have one global mobility policy, which includes short-term and long-term assignments. Is this sufficient, or what is the recommendation? Now, if you have just one global mobility policy, then that might be because you actually had no need for anything else. So instead of now just adding more and more policies, you may just look at whether the policies you have in place are really the right ones. So just look at what had been in the last 3 to 5 years, whether that was perfectly fitting well all the assignments you had, as well as if you now talk to the business, if you think that actually it is still the right policy, we don't have anybody else who we need to cover off, so that is perfect. Then the answer would be yes, it is sufficient, you don't need anything else. I just would add one thing that you definitely should look on top of it about the business travelers you have, and there you might want to add another policy just for the business traveler, and with also look at the process and everything in that perspective to see whether you can cover that population as well. So the next question is actually about business travelers. It is, we see that we need to do more regarding the compliance for the business travelers. What do you think should be our first priority? Now, in regard to the business traveler compliance, I think one of the key requirements is definitely about the work permit or posted worker notification. So that is one thing you should actually really look at. So even if you send one person for just one day to another country, look at whether the country you assign him to, there is the need of a posted worker notification. You will see that in most of the EU member states, whereas in any other member state there is most likely no need at all, and you may have the employee being able to work for a longer period of time. However, for in the EU, you most likely will have already to do something for one day. So the posted worker notification or work permit should be one of the top requirements. And with that, it goes as well the matter of salary dumping, so that you see that the salary you pay to the individual is actually meeting the salary requirements in the country you assign the individual to. This is as well something where the authorities in all of the EU member states, as well as in Switzerland, will definitely look at. Now, if you send somebody from Switzerland to any other EU member state, then most likely that salary part is not really a big issue, because usually you will find that the Swiss salary level actually meets or even is higher than the one in the country, in the other country. However, there is still, if you have people coming to Switzerland, then that is a different issue. What you also should look at, a second priority, is then the insurance coverage, seeing how to implement or how to best actually make a process in regard to the A1 or certificate of coverage, so you have the right documentation in regard to Social Security. The next question is, my impression is that companies find in this pandemic a way to cut costs and to send assignees without families. But we know what this means, especially in some countries. What do you think about it? Yes, I see that tendency as well. But I also look at it not only from a cost perspective, but also that sometimes you think, okay, if the family can remain or maybe is better off in staying home because of the COVID situation, safety, security. COVID is only one matter. It might be actually also better for the family and the kids to remain home instead of going on assignments. Now, on the other hand, I think with any assignment somebody goes to, or to any other country somebody goes to for a bit of a longer time, is always something all the experience you make, everything there is, it is a huge benefit. Even if maybe the kids need to repeat a school year, but whatever they learn in just being or living in a different country is a huge benefit for the future. I would wish that companies actually listen to employees, and employees who want to really go with their family to the other country definitely will also tell that and say that that is one of the their key wish basically for going abroad. I think in the end, if whatever is the right thing for the assignee, and there is the same answer as there is not one assignment type which fits for everything, there is as well the same thing. It's not for every assignee the same way. So even if we feel maybe we don't want to be apart from our family, for another person it might be the right thing and they might focus on different things. So I hope that we basically listen more to each other and in the end find a decision which is the perfect one for everybody and benefits both parties and is a win-win in the end. And only then the assignment as well will be a success. So currently there are no further questions. So still the offer is that in case you do have a question afterwards, then just drop us an email and we're happy to get back to you. So in the last minute, I just would like to point out a couple of things from us. There's one thing we do have on our in our shop, basically in case you have still budget but don't have anything you need to deal with right now, but maybe next year, then you can buy the global mobility voucher if you have the need of it. And then our next 2 webinars, there are still 2 to go this year. Tomorrow base is actually the next one, which is about alternative assignment forms, trends and best practice. And then there's one on the 7th of December, which is about international talent and what you need to look at. Both webinars, in case you do want to join, you will find in our shop. Please go and check it out there. And then, as a final thing, I can only thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon or evening or day. Have a great week as well ahead. Thank you.